it's really a new week. And the papers really had a field day.
Yeah.
I'm sure the editorial room last night must have been very busy. Papers trying to outdo themselves.
Yeah.
Who will report the most. And they really gave us a lot, and kudos to them for that. I find very disturbing the news coming out of Abuja,
okay,
the nation's capital, about the wave of protest and looting of food getting to Abuja. I find it disturbing because when you look at the news for today, policymakers, when you begin from the CBN to the federal government to the National Assembly, the trajectory of their conversation definitely sounds as people who are not aware of what the problem really is. The CBN is busy talking about mopping out 5 trillion naira and curbing inflation.
Okay.
The National Assembly is more focused on probing Buhari's administrations. I'm not saying they shouldn't do that, but when people are hungry this way, 30 trillion naira ways and means, which they were there when all of this nonsense happened. They are talking about reviewing the 2024 budget. That seems to be their focus. And then when you also look at the federal government is busy. I mean, President I wanted to call him Muhammadu Buhari. So the APC administration, by the way, he brought President Muhammadu Buhari. He sold him to us. And President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is in bed with the Qataris, talking about, all of those things they are talking about. In But then back home, at this nation's capital, we find people looting warehouses for food. Now, why I think why I complain about this disconnect is that what the CBN, the federal government, the National Assembly, the state governors, and anybody who is anybody around policy making in Nigeria should do right now is to invest massively in agriculture.
Okay.
And when you look at the statistics of agriculture in Nigeria, it favors Nigeria.
Yes.
We have 70.8 million hectares of agricultural land in Nigeria.
Correct.
That is a blessing from God we've not tapped. The figures tell us that 70% of Nigerians are involved in agriculture, active in agriculture, especially subsistence. And subsistence is what matters at this time, because these are people farming for Nigerians to eat.
Okay.
When we look at what agriculture is contributing to Nigeria, as at 2011-2012, agriculture was contributing as high as 40% of Nigeria's GDP.
Okay.
It has dropped. Yes, it has dropped, but it shows that it can go up. Right now, we are struggling between 25 and 22, or maybe 20, maybe from 20 to 22, around that. But this is quite some huge chunk. When you look at the fact that in Nigeria today, agriculture contributes more to our GDP than petroleum.
Okay.
While agriculture is contributing 20 upwards, petroleum is less than 10. I think our best times was sometimes in the 2012, 2013. Around that period, we were about 10%. Right now, we're about 8.6. We struggle around that. But then look at the paradox. While agriculture contributes higher to our GDP, when you look at Nigeria's export earnings, it is petroleum, about 80%. That clearly tells us we've not invested in where we have strength. If you look at cassava production, Nigeria is the #1 producer of cassava in the world. Statistics say that 20% of the cassava produced in the world comes from Nigeria. Yam production, as high as 70% of the yam production in the world comes from Nigeria. And yet, with all of this, agriculture amounts for a negligible amount of our export earnings. Then you look at, when you split agriculture into two, then you have crop production, and then you have fishery, livestock production and all. While crop production is as high as 90% contributing to GDP, and these other ones are contributing 10%, then you look at the insecurity we have in the country. Because when people say farmers cannot go to farm, which is one of the major issues, farmers are afraid to go to farm, then it is an insecurity caused by herders, people who, they are making money from their trade, no doubt, and it's a beautiful thing. They help us. I'm not saying they don't help us. But then when you look at the fact that those who contribute less than 10% to this GDP are actively destroying the lives and livelihood and production of those who are producing 90%, and these leaders lay idly by. It is really shocking. And then when you look at the fact that despite all of these favorable statistics that agriculture gives to us, in 2019, when Buhari came up with that idea, because that was the best he could think of to shut down our borders, according to them, stop all of this smuggling of rice and all. Nigeria was only producing 57%, that is about 3.7 million metric tons of the rice we consume. And so about 3 million metric tons had to be smuggled into the country, was being smuggled into the country or imported into the country. Then anybody who looks at that fact will say, this is a country that has a major problem. I mean, what kind of policy makers does this country have? We look at the Food and Agricultural Report, call it FAO, I think FAO, yes, Food and Agricultural Organization. When you look at their report, I think sometime in 2017 or is it 2018? I think between 2017 and 2018, we find a disturbing fact that about 26 point something million Nigerians are facing acute hunger. You look at the Food and Nutrition Report of 2019, and it tells us that about 46 point something million Nigerian children have stunted growth. You look at the Agricultural Innovation Report, and it ranks us about 117 or 119 in the world. Now, that just tells you, even though God has blessed us with all of this wonderful land, entrepreneurial people who are ready to farm and all, the only missing thing here is the inability and the failure or the blunt refusal of government to focus on agriculture. Ensure that Nigeria maximizes all of this potential to produce food for her children, and then halt all of these things. They're talking about Abuja today, and all the talk we hear is about police arresting and condemning this and all of that. But Abuja is just another state that has fallen into this wave. We've seen all of this, and we've seen this happen in Niger, we've seen this happen in Kano, we've seen protests in Osun, we've seen protests even in Lagos, we've seen protests across the country. And all they talk about now is, sounding like people who clearly do not even understand what is happening. And what they say is they condemn this, they've made arrests. The worst is yet to come. What policymakers need to do is take advantage of the blessings God has given us in agriculture and invest massively. Because if that is not done, nothing will stop this wave we see. This is worse than what happened in NSAS. Okay. Why we don't, our leaders are yet to feel that this is worse than what happened in NSAS, is because it is happening in one state at a time. Yes. Unlike the NSAS that was coordinated and happening around the country. Correct. This is happening in one state. It seems like, okay, it's happening in Abuja. When it gets to a certain point, and we are slowly getting there will be a mass rise up, and nobody wants to see it, including me sitting down here in the studio. I don't want to see that happen in Nigeria.